An old man confessed he had a wet dream about me. I live at home with my parents. They won't accept rent or money from me, so I pitch in to do the things they can't anymore, such as yard work, some cleaning, heavy lifting, repairs, etc. I eventually got good enough at fixing things that their friend/handyman took me on as a sort of apprentice. So when there's certain jobs he needs an extra hand for, he calls me. It's hard work and I get injured sometimes because I have noodle arms, but overall it's pretty fun. He is currently remodeling my parents' master bathroom. I've been helping with the grunt work in exchange for my parents getting a discount on the labor, so I spend a lot of time with him. This dude tells me I'm pretty every single day, that I get more gorgeous every time he sees me, usually nice stuff old men tend to say, and I don't really mind it. I find it funny considering he always says this when I'm sweaty and covered in paint or something. The other day he 82 told me he had a dream about me and asked if I wanted to hear about it. I said no, and that was that. Well, today he brought it up again and flat out told me he had a dream where we had intimacy. He was sitting on the floor, I came into the room naked, and he formed oral intimacy on me and I really enjoyed it. What the F do I say to do that? I kind of awkwardly laughed and joked, "Oh, I thought you were going to say you were on the floor because you were dead, and got the heck out of there." Any friendliness I felt with this dude is gone now. This isn't the first time one of my parents' male friends have said something inappropriate to me. Last year, one of their childhood friends tried to get me to move in with him and would text me some nasty stuff when he got wasted. I wound up having to get my dad involved to get him to back off. I feel really gross and sick to my stomach right now. I have a weird relationship when it comes to being sexualized by guys, and I even go out of my way to look like a gremlin so people won't stare or say things to me. I know I won't say anything to my parents, and I wish I could just laugh this off like he assumed I would. Honestly, I feel kind of like crying because my trust has been broken by this guy who I kind of looked up to.
Cops, what's the most insane thing you found during a house search? I was a fresh officer with dreams being a hero. I get dispatched to a call of a family fight. Not wife-husband, but brother-sister. The female was reporting the male had attacked her. I arrived and located a female and male. The male I knew from prior contacts. I detained him in handcuffs and quickly smelled the strong odor of pepper spray. I found out that after the male knocked off the female's weave, she pepper sprayed him. I knew there were different types of pepper spray, like gel. I'm walking around the house taking photos for my investigation and accessing the property damage. I noticed that in his room the odor from the pepper spray was extremely strong and made my eyes instantly water with a decent amount of stinging sensation. The fumes made it incredibly hard to breathe and left me without the ability to breathe at points, requiring that I leave the room to get fresh air. I find a brownish gel substance all over the walls in the shape of handprints. I photograph it and determine that it was the pepper gel that male suspect was wiping off of his face onto the wall. I found it odd that it was all over the walls and covered the room. Although this chick dusted him with the entire can of pepper gel. After some investigation I took the male to jail. I responded to the same house days after for an unrelated medical issue. There were more family members at the house and the male was still in custody. I was having a conversation with the family as the hero firefighters were saving the day. I inquired if they had fully cleaned up the pepper spray from the male's room. They gave me a strange look and told me there was none in there. I told them about the gel that was on the wall. I then sat there in horror as they explained to me this man had been, for years, coming on his walls and playing with it. And the gel was in fact old comb and the fumes were the pungent smell of this man's comb room.
My parents don't like my boyfriend, so they gave me an ultimatum. My current boyfriend and I have been dating for 6 years. My parents met him early on by joining us at dinner, everything seemed to go well. Then soon after, we went to his parents' house who live about 2 hours from my parents so I could meet his family, and after learning this my mom told me how hurt she was that we didn't come to see them too. I expressed that this weekend was for me to meet his family, but it was clear that she felt almost betrayed. Fast forward, my parents invite me up to our cabin and my boyfriend joins. We take my car because it was already loaded with laundry etc. After we arrive, my dad pulls me aside and pretty much quietly yells at me how wrong it is that I drove and then that we took my car.
He's the man, he should be driving.
Blah blah blah. This started everything going forward on a sour note. The cabin is in Tahoe, it gets cold in the winter, so my boyfriend wore a sweatshirt with his hood up during some of the time at the cabin. My parents to this day cite this as weird and rude as well as a reason they don't like him. As we continue our relationship it's clear that my parents don't like him, but they can't really give up what I would call good or justifiable reasons. They'll say he's just not a good fit for the family. They don't tell me to stop dating him, because they can't, I'm an adult, but they do tell me that I need to keep them and him separate. They don't want to really hear about him and he's not welcome at their house or cabin. He's never cheated on me, abused me, he has no substance problems etc. Nothing that a normal parent would cite as a problem. Eventually it became an ultimatum given to me by my parents. They tell me that if I continue to date him, eventually it will be either him or them and I'll have to choose. Among other things they would tell me that he'd never be an attorney, which is what he wanted to do, and insinuating that he probably wouldn't be much of anything at all. After undergrad I started working at a financial firm. He graduated from undergrad at UC Berkeley and was accepted to law school across the country. We were always very serious about each other and made the decision to do long distance until he graduated and moved back to CA. My boyfriend has since graduated from law school, moved home, and took the bar last month. He starts work this October and has had a contract since last year. They have known about this as well. Now, 6 years into our relationship, I call my parents and tell them that we are going to be moving in together. About 20 minutes later, I get a text from my mom, saying that she doesn't want to rain on my parade but that this path excludes her and my dad from my future. That they love me but they can't be in my life if I choose to be with my boyfriend. I told them I would never understand. Since then, they have sent me more and more text messages saying stuff like, "We feel like we're losing our daughter, this is heartbreaking," and all at the same time including that this is my choice and my fault. I texted my parents that I thought my boyfriend and I should come over and talk, that texting about this kind of thing is stupid, but not to be patronized or belittled, and if it turned to screaming we would leave. My parents then replied that they wanted to see me face to face to talk but my boyfriend isn't allowed. My boyfriend even called my father the night of the initial "we can't be part of your life" text to try and talk or meet up and see if there was a way to talk through any legitimate concerns. My dad did not answer and responded weeks later, only to text him that they haven't really ever liked him, that he wants to work through it with me alone, and it's my and my boyfriend's fault for not trying to address things earlier. Among other ridiculous reasons to not like my boyfriend were:
Berkeley isn't a man's college.
One time in college, my professor lost my final exam, and when I found out by my final grades and was frantically calling her to figure out what happened, my parents told my boyfriend, "See, this is why we didn't want her to have a boyfriend in college." They found ways to blame him for everything. The only thing that ever had any merit was that he wasn't working yet. Well, this was because he was going to school to be a lawyer. Apparently marrying someone who will make a lot of money is a bad thing. My boyfriend is the nicest, most calm and peaceful person ever, and he loves me more than anything, but apparently their pride is more important than being wrong and accepting him. I'm just trying to figure out if this is normal.
What's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you while doing the deed? I was insanely desperate to hook up with a girl since I could not get laid lately. I would have slept with anybody that asked. That's how down bad I was. Well, this lack of judgment led to the worst night of my life. I met this girl at the bar and she was instantly into me. We talked for a good while, did shots, and then she asked me to go back to her place. I could not begin to tell you how hard my schlong got when she invited me over. So, I drove us to her place, and it's important to point out that it was the middle of wintertime. For some reason, she had all of the windows open so it was freezing cold in her entire house. I asked if she could close them and she quickly shot that idea down, saying she liked it better this way. But anyway, I was sitting on the couch, she was on top of me, and we were just messing around. My balls were so far up my body that it looked like I didn't have any anymore. My other piece just didn't want to work because it was freezing cold. So, she's shirtless, wearing nothing but a skirt, no underwear, and she looks like she's having the time of her life riding me. On the other hand, I was so cold you could hear my teeth chattering and I physically could not move. I was shivering uncontrollably the whole time. It comes to the point where she's ready to finish, so I finish up with her, and here's worst part happens. As I finish, I fart. But I quickly realized it was not just a fart. More stuff came out. Literal poop had come out of my butt while I was sitting on that girl's white couch. I just start silently freaking out, wondering what I'm supposed to do because there's a little pile of poop underneath me on her couch. Then, she kisses me and tells me she's going to clean up in the bathroom. Thing is, I don't even make an attempt to start cleaning up because I'm still freezing my butt off. So when I found a blanket, I just put it over me and I started brainstorming how to get out of this situation. But as I'm sitting there, the front door opens, and who better to come in than her parents and their dog. She comes out of the bathroom and just says, "Oh, I didn't know you guys were going to be here so soon." They don't even answer her and start questioning me, asking who I am. I say, "Hi, I'm a friend." Mind you, at this point, I don't even remember the girl's name. So now, her parents, and their dog are all in the room while my schlong is out on their couch and I'm sitting in a pile of my own poop. What I try to do is I take the blanket and I try to scoop the poop out with the blanket so I can get the poop in my head and I can put it somewhere else. That's when their dog comes over and starts sniffing around, finds the poop stain on the couch, and starts to lick the poop off the couch. They're all looking at me at this point while I'm trying to get the dog to back off, and I'm wondering to myself how they don't smell the poop. I'm trying to hold the poop in my hand and also trying to get this dog away to stop him from eating the poop off the couch. The dog starts barking and thrashing at me, then does the worst thing possible. He yanks the blanket off of me and my schlong just springs out in the open. They all saw that my schlong was out, they saw there was poop on the couch, and they saw the stain I had left. I cannot even begin to describe the aftermath of this situation. The dad instantly started cursing me out, calling me a bunch of names, the girl looked so disgusted and almost barfed, the dog kept trying to lick the freaking poop, and the mom was crying because I had ruined the white couch. The dad then saw where my pants were, so he grabbed them and told me I couldn't have it back until I had cleaned the couch. It was a miserable hour. By the end of it, I couldn't even feel my balls because it was still freezing. When I finished, I left and never saw them again. Anyway, hit me up, ladies.
My husband loves one of our sons more than the others. Today, he made a mistake that might cost him his family. I want to start by saying my husband is a good man. He provides a very comfortable life for me and our children. He has never been abusive or manipulative. He's never kept secrets or cheated. But he has one huge flaw. He has a favorite child. We have 3 teenage sons. They are Mason, 18, Kyle, 15, and Sean, 13. Our youngest son Sean is my husband's favorite. He knows this, I know this, and what really hurts me is that our children know it. It wasn't always like this. He used to be equally loving to all of our boys. But when Sean was 5 years old he got very sick and was dangerously close to leaving us. It was obviously an extremely tough time for my husband and I, and through the entire hospital stay Sean always wanted his dad above anyone else. It bonded them. Ever since then my husband has always favored and spoiled Sean to the detriment of his relationships with Mason and Kyle. The two older boys noticed as they got older and were understandably hurt that their father always favored Sean. I had several conversations with my husband throughout the years about how he needs to realize he has 3 sons, not just one. He always listened and would make an effort to be more involved with Mason and Kyle, but it never lasted. He'd always go back to being super dad to Sean. This all came to a head today when Kyle's school had an award ceremony that Kyle would be presented an award at. This is of course a virtual event as COVID is still an issue and the boys are doing online distance learning. Essentially the event was just a large group video call where the kids would be recognized for their academic achievements, and there was a raffle for several prizes. Kyle was excited because one of the prizes was a game system he wanted. Parents were invited to join in on their own computer to get an extra entry for raffle prizes on behalf of their children. I wasn't going to be able to make it as I had work, but I told my husband to just drop in and watch them read Kyle's name and stick around so Kyle could have just a slightly better chance at getting the prize he wanted. Again, this was a virtual event. All he had to do was go to the website and sit there for less than half an hour. School events like this, even pre-COVID, were always more my thing. My husband almost never went to these things as he was usually working, but of course there was a higher chance of him showing up for one of Sean's events. But he's working mostly from home and he wasn't even going to be on the clock at the time of this event. He said he'd do it. On the day of the event I reminded him before I left for work to make sure he showed up. I sent him the invite link again while I was at work just to be sure he had it, and he assured me he'd be there. Well, the event came and went. Kyle was in his room on his own laptop for the event and my husband never joined the group call. I was busy at work so I couldn't message him back until almost an hour after the event ended. I asked how it went. He said he was trying to join but the link didn't work. I asked what did he mean he was trying to join now when the event was an hour ago. He replied, "Oh, I thought you said it was now, I saw red." He missed the event because he got the time wrong. After I told him several times what time and exactly how to join, all he had to do was click the link at the right time. I was furious, but I wanted to wait until I got home to talk to him. So I get home and see our oldest son Mason's car in our driveway. He does not live with us anymore, he is in college and has his own apartment. I walk inside and Sean is in the living room looking upset. I ask him what's wrong and he says the other boys are arguing with Dad. I asked what happened and he said he doesn't know, just that Kyle got really mad and called Mason when he told Kyle that he and my husband went to get frozen yogurt earlier. I asked what time they went and he tells me it was 10 minutes before Kyle's event. He missed the event because he chose to take Sean to get frozen yogurt. I learned later that Sean was begging him and my husband, as usual, caved and took him. At that moment Mason, Kyle, and my husband all come down the stairs. They're yelling and Mason has a duffel bag with Kyle's things. I asked what is happening and Mason says he's taking Kyle with him to stay at his apartment for a while. I told him Kyle can stay the night but he can't just move in with him. My husband said that Kyle is not leaving and he needs to talk to him privately. But Mason blew up on him. He said everyone knows Sean is his favorite and he couldn't tell Sean to wait 30 minutes before taking him to get yogurt. I told Mason I understood his anger but that we all needed to sit down and talk. Kyle joins in and says that he's tired of his dad always choosing Sean over the two of them and he wants to stay with Mason. My husband was apologizing and saying he doesn't choose Sean over them, he just made a mistake. Mason challenges my husband saying you always just make mistakes that leave me and Kyle on the back burner, and told him to try to remember the last time he did something with either he or Kyle alone. My husband listed 2 events. Mason reminded him Sean tagged along for both. My husband said their family and of course he's allowed to go with. Kyle shouted back that my husband has taken out of town trips with just he and Sean 3 times in the last year and a half. And he was right. Sean got visibly upset at this point. Mason said he was sorry and that this wasn't about anything he did wrong. That it was their dad's fault, not his. Sean went upstairs to his room. My husband started after him and Mason said, "See? You've got 3 upset sons and you still run off to comfort Sean." My husband said that's not true, he's just more sensitive than the other boys. Mason told him he wants so badly for Sean to be his only son that he can have his wish. He said not to call or text him or Kyle anymore and that they don't have a dad anymore. Kyle added, "You already act like we don't exist anyway." My husband's face dropped. The way he was neglecting our 2 older boys finally hit him. I was a sobbing mess. I could see the hurt in both my sons' eyes. I told them to stay so we could talk and find a solution. Kyle begged me to just let him leave, saying he didn't want to be in the house anymore. Mason hugged me and assured me he'd make sure Kyle got his school work done and he'd call me tomorrow. I let them go. As much as I want Kyle here, I know he needs time away from my husband. My husband went to the kitchen and cried. He's never been an emotional man, but the reality of our two older boys wanting to go no contact with him finally knocked some sense into him. I wanted to yell and scream at him. I told him for years that he needed to stop favoring one child. All he had to do was show up one goddamn time for Kyle. I'm so angry. Instead, I told my husband that I love him and I know he's hurt, so I'm not going to yell at him. But I told him I love my children more and that if he didn't fix things with his boys and start treating them equally from this moment forward, I would be separating from him. He just said, I don't want to lose my family. He started to get up, saying he should make sure Sean was okay. I told him I would check on Sean, and for once he needed to think of his other sons. I admit I was passive aggressive, but my blood was boiling and I was trying my best not to tear my husband down any more than my son's parting words had. I spent the next hour consoling Sean and reassuring him that his brothers don't hate him and that their issue is with my husband, not him. He said they won't text him back and I said he needs to give them time. I'm emotionally exhausted. I don't know what to do. My husband is sleeping in the guest room tonight. We've never not slept in the same bed unless one of us is out of town for one reason or another. Is it worth separating from my husband over if he doesn't fix it? This is the only big issue we've ever had in our marriage, but he broke my children's hearts, and even if we do stay together, I don't know if I can ever forgive him for that. I feel like a failure as a mother for not being more assertive with my husband and not interfering throughout all these years. I also feel like it may be too late for him to make things right at this point. What do I do? What can I do? I finally cured my bad breath after 11 years. I was so excited when I finally figured it out that I thought it would be appropriate to share it with others. I have personally been struggling with bad breath since I was very young for several reasons. When I was 10, I had tonsil stones and didn't really know what they were. At that age, I thought that it was food coming back up, so I ignored it for 6 years, until I did my research in high school. I removed them myself thinking that it would help, but it actually made it worse. I was bullied by others who continuously commented, "Your breath smells like crap." At that point, I begged my mother to take me to an ENT and scheduled an appointment to get my tonsils removed. The doctors told me that they should have been removed years ago because they were highly infected. After I got them removed, I thought I was home free to continue brushing, flossing, and using mouthwash with no bad breath. Wrong. After I got my tonsils removed, I still had bad breath. I researched again and decided to buy a tongue scraper, but it didn't work. I was at a standstill again for about another couple of years until I looked up that the ingredient in most toothpaste was sodium lauryl sulfate, SLS, which can dry your mouth out. I did have dry mouth, so I started focusing on buying toothpaste without that ingredient. I also started using alcohol-free mouthwash, and it still didn't work. I was back on the path of spending lots of money buying different products that had no effect on me. I later researched that post-nasal drip could cause bad breath, which I had. I went to the doctor, and they told me to buy over-the-counter nasal spray. I used it thinking that it was all over. Nope. From there, I thought that everything was coming from my stomach because my oral health was not the problem at this point, so I started eating healthy foods in hopes that it would help, but it didn't. Then, I started flossing after every meal, and it only helped temporarily, so I knew there was another problem. I kept reading forums online about people who cured their bad breath, and I came across someone who said that they started using oral probiotics that contained Bliss M18. I bought several bottles hoping that this would finally be my eureka. It wasn't. That, too, was also a temporary solution. After everything I tried, I thought there was no hope for me, but then I came across the post that talked about using diluted hydrogen peroxide, HP, as a mouthwash. My dentist makes me use diluted HP every time I came in, so I figured it was safe. I brushed and flossed like I normally did and then swished a solution in my mouth, even brushed it on my tongue, and it worked. I finally had a long-term effect. For the rest of the day, my breath was fine. I didn't think it was possible. Then, the next morning, I woke up with very little morning breath when it's usually very bad in the morning. I don't use the solution daily, only when I feel the need to. I'm hoping that my post will reach someone because I have struggled with this for most of my life, and it has really dampened my confidence, but not anymore. If I can figure it out, then you can too.